Welcome to the podcast, Lauren.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you.
So nice to meet you. And I'm very excited about you being here. I really love the fact that you have a background in both science and understanding spirituality, which is kind of like my cup of tea. So I would love for you to give us your background story, your origin story, and how you got into the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so I would say that there's a few kind of key points in the story. And so I'd say the first one was the birth of my son in 2016. So I had a really beautiful birth at a midwifery center, at a birthing center. And he was my second, and it was my second birth. And my first birth was at a hospital. And so, what it gave me was this beautiful perspective of how, when you give birth in a little bit more of a holistic, kind of natural setting, that it can lead to a very, very empowering experience. And so, it was just, I still remember that feeling of after my son was born, just feeling like a freaking rock star. Like it was just so
Hmm.
incredible. And I had no idea that that was possible. And so after maybe he was about 6 months old, and I was thinking about going back to my job as a high school science teacher. So at that time, I had been teaching high school science for almost a decade. And I was like, no, I don't want to do it. I
Hmm.
want to change career paths. I want to become, and at the time, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but I was really inspired to go into midwifery.
Hmm.
And when I looked into what the training was going to involve, I was not ready to go back to school for another 4 years at that point.
Hmm.
And so that's why becoming a birth doula became very attractive to me because it was a little bit of a less extensive training, allowed for a little bit more flexibility. And I really just wanted, at the end of the day, to empower women to have really, really, to have the knowledge, to have the education, and to feel empowered as they went through pregnancy and birth. And so I became a birth doula first and foremost before I got into my fertility work. And I was already a yoga teacher. And so when I went into this world of perinatal wellness, then I started to specialize in prenatal yoga. So I was teaching prenatal yoga. I was a birth doula. I was teaching mom and baby yoga. And that was amazing until this thing called COVID happened.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I wasn't able to do that work anymore because I wasn't able to go into yoga studios. Yoga studios had shut down. I wasn't able to go to births because I was not allowed to be in hospitals. And so that's kind of what made me, or gave me the opportunity. I always see silver
Hmm.
linings. So at the
Yeah.
time, I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to start teaching yoga online. I had
Hmm.
never, ever taught yoga online before. I didn't own a mic, I didn't own a camera, but I figured it out. And from there, I started offering 6-week online yoga series. And then that's when I got into the fertility work because I was really interested in a program that was being offered called a fertility specialist certification by a school in Toronto. So I'm based in Montreal. And so I
Hmm.
had done my doula training with a school called Bebo Mia, and they offered this fertility specialist certification course. And I was like, that sounds like it's for me. Like, I really want to be
Hmm.
able to support women through all phases of this motherhood journey. And so I did that. And then I started offering a fertility support group. And then I started teaching fertility yoga. And then
Awesome. Love
I got
that.
into developing my mind body fertility program. And so today that is the main program that I'm offering is mind body fertility coaching to women all over the world now.
I love that. And I know that you also have a background in neuroscience, which is so fascinating to me. I follow Dr. Joe Dispenza, and a lot of what he does is like neuroscience and then kind of bridging that with spirituality and how to really hack the mind. I think that that's always been a mystery for people because I think many people know deep down, either deep down or somewhat like from some of the things that they study that yes, we can do a lot with our minds, but it's always it always comes down to the how. Like how can you translate that into like really making a change?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also love Joe Dispenza's work.
Yeah, I was sure you did. Just based on like reading all of your background.
Yeah. In the neuroscience, it was a phase of my life where I was deeply, deeply interested in human behavior. I still am today, and the brain. And I went on to pursue graduate studies. And at the time, I was PhD track, but I was using a, a protocol that involved mice. And so I was
Mhm.
working with mice. And what I learned after those 2 years of, I decided to stop at my master's degree and not pursue the PhD because I realized I really just wanted to work with people and not with animals and not be in a lab in front of a microscope. And then that's what ultimately led me to teaching science.
That's so interesting. So how do you relate? It's interesting because like my background is in architecture and now I do a lot of like healing and I do acupuncture and online coaching. But like the acupuncture aspect of it, as I put the needles in, I really see sort of what I learned with the architecture in the body. And it's interesting because I feel the same way. Like there's a silver lining. Like even though you switch careers, you could still take what you've learned and reflect it on what you're doing today, even though it's different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just found myself saying that to a client this morning, where I said, one of my gifts that I really see is that I'm able to see patterns.
Hmm.
And I do see myself in the work that I do today. I kind of see myself as a detective
Hmm.
of trying to solve this infertility or why can't I get pregnant mystery or problem.
Hmm.
And I think being able to see patterns is really important because I have a lot of clients from, like I mentioned, all over the world. And when you start to do this work for a while, you start to see those patterns emerge. And then I believe that that then helps me offer solutions to their problems because if there's a pattern, then there must be a commonality. And that's also, I'd say, rooted in the scientific method of like, that's what we're doing as scientists. We're looking for patterns and solutions.
That's interesting that you say that because Chinese medicine, it's all about patterns. And we look at patterns, they're basically to see what type of imbalance. So, one type of imbalance can have many different patterns that cause it. That's why we don't just go after the symptom because the symptom can be derived from so many different patterns. So it's kind of interesting that you look at it that way as well. And what are some of the patterns that you've seen? Obviously, this isn't kind of like a generalized thing, but maybe you can tell us some instances or stories so that some people listening might be like, oh, that sounds like me.
Yeah. So my work is primarily in the realm of the mind and the body, in the way of like mindset and
Yeah.
what are people's beliefs and
Hmm.
how are those beliefs that they may not even be consciously aware of, how those are informing their thought patterns
Yeah.
and then how the thought patterns are impacting, and I'd say it's a two-way highway of like thoughts impact emotion, which impacts body, but it's not just always like a linear model, right? And I
Hmm.
really see it as they're all interacting. And so I see, so we can look at it from the perspective of what are the patterns I see in the thoughts, what are the
Yeah.
patterns I see in the emotional body, because I do
Hmm.
see patterns in terms of repressed emotions that people are carrying.
Hmm.
And then I also see it as kind of archetypes of certain personality types
Yeah.
that I tend to work with women who are perfectionists. So that's the one personality type that I'd say, often. And I know just from following you in your work and reading your book that it's very
Oh,
similar
yeah.
in that the perfectionist personality. That's the type of client that often comes to me saying like, Lauren, like I've been able to achieve everything that I've
Yeah.
wanted in my life through hard work, and
Right.
this is the one thing that I can't make happen through hard work. And so what I'd say about that personality type is that, that hard work, and I know this language would resonate with you and your audience probably, is like it's the yang, it's the doing.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
so they're not used to, or it feels uncomfortable for them to be more in the receptive yin energy of surrender and of being.
Yeah, you're totally speaking my language. And it's true because it's very subtle. Like that's the difference is that I think that we've been conditioned. I think it's just a conditioning because I know growing up, the people that did the most and hard work and those are the people that got pats on the back. And then you feel like, wow, like I'm powerful, I'm able to do things. And yes, the yang has a place, but it also, the yin also is necessary as well. So it's kind of like getting that combination of the two.
Yeah, and they do need, and I think that's also hard for many of my clients is it we tend to, I think, as a society have this all or nothing thinking
Yeah.
where it's one thing or the other. And so I find my clients have a hard time wrapping their heads around this concept of like, well, we need both. Like, yes, we
Hmm.
need to be in action taking and doing, of course, in order to be able to get pregnant, and we have to also know how to be and open to receive and surrender. And I think that's hard to like kind of know when to employ which strategy.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true. So I know that I have like my certain ways of getting people to shift. What are some of the things that you do? Because I know you mentioned also nervous system regulation, and that is definitely a big one because I think that the nervous system is such a reflection of the yin and the yang, and the ability really like with the vagal tone to like shift from one to the other. I think that muscle is really what it's like, the muscle of balance, I call it. So I would love to get your take on that and how you work with people to get them to strengthen that muscle of like shifting and balancing.
Right. So, because I teach yoga and meditation and mindfulness, I do like to use those and breath work through the lens of yoga, which is more pranayama, which is slightly different. But I,
But it
I
does
have,
make a difference. The breath work, a lot of like what yoga teaches helps the nervous system.
yes, absolutely, through the breath. And so I do like to teach these skills to my clients and not just teach them, but have them actually practice these skills so that they can then use them in real time in their life. And
Mm,
so that word that you mentioned of like the muscle, I also like using that analogy because I think people can relate to, if ever someone has gone to a gym to try to build muscle mass or done some form of training
right.
physically, then we can understand this idea of like we have to do the reps. And then when we do the reps, that's going to help build the muscle. And
Hmm.
so that's why I like to really encourage in my program and with my clients that they develop a regular meditation practice and a movement practice. I like to say movement in the form of yoga because I think that a slow, mindful yoga practice is a really great way to help people embody, like become embodied, right? So
Hmm.
they're not so much in their head and that they're more in their body.
Hmm.
However, that being said, I think that it's an important principle no matter what type of movement we're doing, because if somebody is doing another type of activity, can still be very much in your head. So I like to just, all the time be really enforcing this idea of like mindfulness of can we be in our body as we're doing these activities. Right. So I would say that those are the skills that I'm getting people to practice, to put in their reps, so that when a moment in their day comes, let's say where they are upregulated, where they're feeling agitated, where they're experiencing a spiral maybe of thoughts that are leading them into a dark place, right? That they have in the moment the ability to bring awareness to it, and
Hmm.
then in the moment to be able to respond to it, and to not just be feel like they're kind of a victim of their thoughts, or that they
Hmm.
they are their thoughts, or that
Hmm.
that's reality, right? And then kind of wait for next week when you do go to your yoga class to then work on it, right? So it's like it's not enough, I'd say, to be just only doing yoga or doing meditation on your yoga mat or on your meditation cushion, because we have to actually be taking those practices and then practicing, what we practice on our mat, off our mat. We need to
Yes.
actually be able to bring those skills now into our day-to-day life so that they can serve us in the moments when we need them.
Yeah, that's such a great point because that is when those things sneak up. And I think that also a great point that you made is really like looking at your thoughts and knowing that they are not you. And because it's because it's in our minds, we automatically identify with them.
Right.
And then therefore we give them such absolute truth and such faith in our thoughts, and our thoughts are not really, they're so shifting and changing. They're not stable things to put all of our faith into. And I think that the moment you become mindful, you start to become aware that you are the consciousness, and the thoughts come and go, and you're aware, you're able to be aware of your thoughts. That means you are not your thoughts. And I think that that whole idea or feeling is only something that comes out of meditation.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it becomes very empowering, because something that a lot of my clients, and I know from just knowing so intimately, the pain and struggle that comes with infertility and, struggles to get pregnant, is that we feel out of control. We feel like
Mhm.
that we're very much not in control of the situation. And so
Yeah.
I like to offer to my clients that, well, you do, to a certain extent, have control over the thoughts that you are thinking.
Mhm.
And the
Right.
one distinction I like to make is that sometimes those thoughts are on autopilot. So those
Mhm.
autopilot or kind of programmed reaction thoughts,
Yes.
those
Mhm.
ones we don't have control over. But what we do get to control is if we choose to believe them or not, or if we choose to reframe. So we
Right.
can notice the thought that we're having. And then when we bring awareness to it, then we get to choose. Do I want to believe
I
that
love
thought
that.
and that story? Or do I want to actually tell a new story and start to insert a different, empowering belief or a different mantra or affirmation to really help me shift in my thinking?
Right, and that's when you're consciously reprogramming your
Yes.
thoughts.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Amazing. So what are some of the things that you've seen, that really kind of, shift the nervous system? You were talking about like meditation. Are there things that are physically like breath work that can stimulate the vagus nerve that you're seeing that really, makes a drastic change that somebody can use like at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the breath. The breath, I think, is the most accessible tool that we all have.
Yeah,
We
and it's
are,
free.
it's free and it comes with us wherever we are.
Yes.
Don't need any special props. We don't need a guided audio. We don't have to put in our earbuds, right? When we can develop this ability to become aware and be mindful of how we are breathing, right? Then we get to use the breath as a way to help us regulate. Right. And I really like to, because of the teacher in me, I love to take things that might seem complex and just make it really simple. I really think less is more.
Yeah.
And so what I like to I do like to teach my students and just recommend that everybody gets familiar with their breathing patterns. I think it's,
Mhm.
I have a line and it's like, you can't change what you're not aware of.
Yeah.
Right. So awareness is always the key, the first piece. So that's why it's like, okay, so like when you breathe, like what is your inhale like? What is your exhale like?
Mhm.
Fundamental kind of breathing 101. And where do you feel your breath? A lot of people are
Mhm.
chest breathers. And when we breathe in the chest, this makes our diaphragm tight. And then this can lead to just being in this chronic state of upregulation. So,
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
simple, fundamental breathing 101. We want to make sure that we're breathing three-dimensionally, diaphragmatic breathing, so letting the belly expand when we breathe in. And we want to be mindful of kind of the length of our inhalation versus our exhalation. So the
Mhm.
inhalation is linked to the sympathetic system, and then the exhalation is parasympathetic. So we either want it to be equal length
Mhm.
inhale, exhale, or if we're looking to downregulate, we want to make the exhalation longer than the inhalation.
Right.
And then it's
It's a
simple.
nice hack. It's great, because it's a great hack actually for insomnia. Like if people wake up, and sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night, from a noise or something, and then I'll try to go back to sleep, and then that's what I'll do, and almost always I don't even remember how I fell asleep, so I know it works.
You're lucky that it's that easy. For me, it's
Yeah.
not that easy to fall back
No.
asleep just by doing
Well, you
breath
know
work
what
in the
they
middle of the night.
there was, something also on Huberman. I knew that this was something that worked. I knew that
Yeah.
like inhale to 4, exhale to 8, and then sometimes let it out. But then another thing is, while your eyes are closed, look side to side, and it helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really helps
Yeah.
me.
And so that's the other thing that I would offer for a somatic practice to help regulate the nervous system. And this is something I teach at every single coaching call that I do.
Hmm.
And it's just with the eyes, and it's using your peripheral vision.
Mhm.
So if you can keep your eyes straight and then not move your head and then start to open up to your peripheral gaze, while at the same time feeling like the eyes are going a little bit deeper into the eye socket, that just the act of shifting into your peripheral vision in that way really also helps activate the parasympathetic response.
Oh, I love that. I haven't heard of that, like that specific exercise, so I love that.
Yeah.
Any other tidbits on parasympathetic tricks? I
Yeah,
always
well,
love hearing those.
so the breath and the eyes, and what I would also say is then coming to the just this is super simple and it's just slowing down.
Yeah.
And I find sometimes we have resistance to things that are simple. I
Yeah,
think
this is
we,
true.
as a society, have this
Yeah.
belief that in order to be worthwhile, it has to be hard and require
More.
effort.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I always say, well, just notice, are you talking quickly? Are you
Mhm.
moving quickly? Even like in the car, are you like, is there a sense of urgency about like getting from point A to point B? And so you're driving in this way of like urgency.
Right.
And then can we just slow down 1%,
Yeah.
2%, talk a little bit slower, move a little bit slower. And then that really also helps just bring us back into our body and activate the parasympathetic.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it sounds like it's coming back into the present moment because when we're so hyper focused, we're thinking about the end point. We're not really focused on the moment.
Yeah.
And when you do that, like my whole idea, like my thought really about this, and I guess I don't know if there's like any specific proof, but in Chinese medicine, our life force vitality is something that happens obviously only in the moment. And so our energy, our thoughts really emit energy. So when we have our consciousness and our awareness in the present moment, we're actually feeding more life force vitality in that moment. It's kind of like all of our energies in this one moment portal rather than being divided between the past and the future. And now, we all had moments like that in our lives where we had very important, pivotal moments in our life where it was moments of joy when we had our family together, or there's some kind of like moment that was very momentous in our life and it feels kind of surreal. But you also find that you're so present that you feel so alive.
Yeah.
And that's really what presence can offer you.
Wow. Amazing. I so love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I often talk about the power of the present moment to help anxious thinking, because often
Hmm.
the thoughts that we have that are leading to anxiety are often future based what ifs,
Yeah.
like worst case scenario of things that will go wrong or that I am afraid of that might happen in the future. Right?
Hmm.
And then there's the idea of like the more kind of heavier depressive thoughts being thoughts from in the past on the
Yeah.
timeline of, and then there is often emotion caught up in, it's either the shame or the judgment we're putting on ourselves for decisions we've made in the past.
Mhm.
Either of those serve us. So it's like when we can come back to the here and now of the present moment, then we don't
Yeah.
have to be in that thinking. But then I love your addition of that in the present moment. That's when we can access our vital life force energy. In yoga, we call it prana.
Yeah.
Prana is the same as
Same thing.
chi.
It's the same
Yeah.
thing, just different language.
Yeah. I
And
know.
have you heard of Eckhart Tolle?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he teaches all about that, and I highly recommend his books, both books. And then he has other supplemental, but there's like the two main ones,
Yeah.
The Power of Now and The New Earth.
Yeah.
I highly recommend if anybody's listening to this, check it out because it's one of those life changers. Like there's some books that are just life changers,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is him really coming into it in the present moment. In this moment, he talks about being in the present, but a lot of his teachings is really reflected in ancient teachings and kind of like Buddhism and a lot of the Vedas about really coming into this present moment. And when you really can release yourself from that past and the future, you're creating this sense of nirvana, this endlessness, and this freedom of self.
Mm.
And you feel free. When you feel free, your nervous system's just like rocking. Like enjoy. It's like in it's like major like hyper flow.
Yeah, I love it. And I can feel it in my body right now as we're having this conversation, and it's getting me really excited. And I'm feeling that like
Yeah.
high vibrational energy in my body.
Yes.
I don't get to have these types of conversations with a lot of people in my life. So it's so fun to be like on the total same page as someone.
Yeah, no, I knew that we were on the same page
Yeah.
even when we've corresponded before, and I was like, okay, when the time comes, we're going to talk. And I knew that we're aligned just based on reading your information. So,
Yeah.
of course, that's what happens when you're having an aligned conversation. But also, that just what you just said is how much our minds respond to visualizations, and sometimes that can come from cues of words. And so when your mind embodies a feeling and you really feel that, that's why visualizations, and I can't even say it's just visualization because it's not just a vision, it's a sensory thing. And this is how we can sense things in our dreams without actually having it physical. So that whole aspect of our mind and experience is not just in relation to the physical. So it
Mm.
is something that we can conjure up within us, which means, wow, we are powerful. Like we can do so much more just by choosing that thought.
Yeah, I love that. And I always teach that the body doesn't know the difference between something that's imagined and something that is real. And then this
Yeah.
is the power of visualization, in the mind body connection, is if we can, if we have, or we have perceived the limitations in our physical body, and then we can bring into our mind a visualization of that being healed or that being reconciled, then the body actually, with time, I'd say it's
Yeah. With
something that
time.
requires, time. Although every now and then, right, for somebody who just really
It's
catches on to this
spontaneous.
idea, it doesn't have to take too long.
Happens at Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreats all the time.
Yeah.
But 100% what you're saying, and there's science to really back that up.
Yeah.
There's science that visualizations make like a huge difference in physiology. And then I love the whole like lemon visualization experiment. You
Yes.
know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about
I
because I
used
see
to
you
do that
smiling.
in my
Yes.
workshops just so people could
Yeah.
have a lived experience of it to reinforce the
Yeah.
concept. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. If people are hearing this for the first time, it's just imagining a lemon. Like you just go through this whole like visualization of experiencing the lemon and the sour taste going all the way in your throat and your mouth and really like getting into it. And probably about, I would say 90, not every single person has this, but like about 90% of the people in the room will start to salivate. And then you're like, well, why are you salivating? Like, what's the difference? It's just the thought of a lemon actually made you salivate,
Yeah. And
which is
people are
wild.
probably salivating right now just hearing you tell the story, like I am.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
It's this physiological response because the reason why we salivate when we have a lemon is because the acid's not good for the teeth. It kind of like dilutes the acid in our mouth.
Interesting.
So the thought of that, the fact that the thought of that can actually make a physiological response that's involuntary because you can't even tell yourself, oh, salivate, and then salivate. It won't happen. So just the thought of that experience has an involuntary response is just mind blowing.
So cool. Yeah. And when I'm teaching about the mind body connection and just trying, I'd like to think that most of the world is on board today about like this being a real
You'd
thing.
like to think it, yeah.
But
but it's like slow
it is,
sometimes, even
yeah.
with the science and the research. Sometimes it takes time.
Yeah, but I do like to give two examples to people just to reinforce that it is real, it is science, it's not just some woo-woo thing. And I talk about it in sports. So I used to be a highly competitive swimmer growing up. And in sports, visualization is a big thing. Like any high performing athlete is doing visualization before their race.
Mhm.
Right. And
Totally.
so that is very good proof and evidence of like the power of visualization, because it helps those high performance athletes perform better when they can actually visualize themselves going through their races. So that's one. And then the other one is just the placebo effect.
Yeah.
And so the fact that the placebo effect, right? I always like to tell people that, if someone tells you that you're taking a pill and it's going to work, but there's no active ingredient in it, and then it does work, like that is the placebo effect. So this is the
Yeah.
power of our
It does
minds.
work. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like it works so well that it's a nuisance for a lot of researchers.
for sure.
Yeah. And that's amazing stuff. I love everything that you're talking about, and I love the fact that you were talking about also like experiencing things through the body, and how, because I think that that is such a key way to explore emotions where it won't be as overwhelming, because most of us think that we have to solve it from the mind. And I'm sure you've heard this before, you can't really solve, what was it, Einstein, you can't really solve something from the same state that caused the problem.
Exactly.
And so when we're trying to kind of spin our wheels and figure it out from the mind, and we're still like overwhelmed by the emotion, one of the most amazing ways to do this is through the body, like you said. And I think that that is key because it feels a lot less overwhelming.
Right. It feels less overwhelming, I think, and then it's just, I think it's more powerful way, or not even powerful. Like, to me, it's the only way. Like, if we're not
Yeah.
working with the body when we're working to process emotion, then there's
Hmm.
something being missed and overlooked. And I
Yeah.
think that, and psychology, like modern psychology, is definitely now on board with that we can't
Yeah.
just be doing this from a place of cognition and the mind and talk, and that it does need to incorporate the felt sense of the body. And I think this is why I'm currently doing a somatic experiencing practitioner training program, and I know
Oh,
that
that's
it's
great.
so much in demand right now, these programs,
Hmm.
because again, I think we're just really seeing that we need to be addressing the body when we're working with trauma.
Oh, big time. So, yeah, yeah, totally. So, I would love for if you could share how you work with people and how people can find you.
Right. So I am like how where people can find me online in the interweb.
Yeah, people, yeah,
Yeah.
and what programs you
Okay.
offer. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. So on Instagram, I am at fertile from within. I do also have a website, which is a different name because my original account was Breathe with Lauren. So I have two Instagram accounts, but my fertility specific one is Fertile from Within. My website is Breathe with Lauren. And my main program that I offer is a mind body coaching program called Fertile from Within. And I do that as a group. I am starting my autumn cohort next week. I do it in small groups. I love running groups because I think it is. I love being the guide and mentor for a group. I think there's a really special energy that comes together when we're in groups. I know that not everybody is necessarily comfortable in a group setting, and I'd say that's the exact reason to do it.
Yes, they're
Because
powerful.
yeah, that is good for our social nervous system and to
Yeah, it's
help with
true.
nervous system regulation, to show up, to allow yourself to be a little bit vulnerable, a little bit
Mhm.
uncomfortable in this scenario. I always say that, when it's a coaching program, it's not a support group where people are like just, I don't know, grieving and in heaviness. It's like definitely a higher energy kind of place of empowerment. We're going to come here and support one another type of group.
Mhm.
But I also do the work one-on-one. So for people that are interested in private coaching, that's something I also walk people through the program on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah, and just as a note, this is gonna probably air a couple of, like, maybe 6 weeks from now.
Right.
So, if people were coming in a little later, they'd have
Yes, yes,
another.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So I
Yeah.
do run the program like as a group twice a year. And then
Okay,
for
got
when
it.
people are, so my next cohort will be in probably starting in February. I usually give like the January as a month to lead into it. And then I'll
Got
run
it.
it in February. It's a 3-month program. And people get one-on-one coaching sessions and also group coaching sessions with me, but then they get the whole library. And that's why
Mhm.
I believe that my program is so powerful and effective for people, because it is integrating the mindset piece, so
Mhm.
call it the fertile mindset, with the emotional body piece, with the nervous system regulation piece. And I say when we bring all these things together, it allows people to step into like the most fully fertile version of themselves. And with the coaching, they don't, have to worry about getting I know sometimes with do it yourself courses, you get off track, and there's, we have the best intentions sometimes to finish and then we don't. So that's why I also include coaching so that people can really see the program through.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. I knew that we were going to have a great conversation, and we totally did. So, thank you so much for coming on today. It was such a great conversation.
Yes, it was. It was too short. I want to keep on talking. We'll have to do another one.
Yes, for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, and can I say one more thing?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
of
know if we
course.
can add it. So, also something that I have for your listeners and for basically anybody who is on a fertility journey and wants to try mind body practices is I have a mind body fertility toolkit. And that's
Hmm.
something that includes 2 fertility yoga practices, 2 breathing exercises, and 2 meditations. And
Love
I
that.
offer that as a free toolkit. So I'd love to offer that to your listeners.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lauren.
You're welcome.